Okay, hello everyone. Good to see you on this first occasion of the distinguished lecture series in business analytics and data science. This is a new format that we will have every other month on the first Wednesday of every month, divided by 2 modulo 0. So for those of you who need some kind of analytical touch to it. In this first presentation, Henrik will present on how AI will change our lives. It certainly has enhanced my professional life. I'm doing things that I wouldn't have been able to do only 2 years ago. Not just because I learned a lot, but also because now I have tools that can even advance my learning. And I'm more productive and better than ever. And let's see what Henrik has to say and add to this list of potentials, let's say. Thank you.
Thank you very much for coming in. It's my pleasure to talk about AI. I think AI is an exciting topic, generative AI in particular. It was just GPT's second birthday, if you've missed it, last week. So I think it's also a good time to reflect a little bit on that and see what is possible. So it's going to be a lay people's talk. I'm not going to talk about technical, a little bit, but not about technical details. So it's really, my intention is to give you a little bit of insight and maybe also a little bit of advice. So, maybe it depends a bit on the audience. I mean, we're in an academic context, so I guess most people have some relationship to AI. But maybe first, just quick check-in, who would agree or who would say that AI has a significant impact on their lives? So who would agree with that statement? It's not a scientific question, but more like a feeling. Okay. So most people do agree. So for those who do not agree, let me quickly recap, like just give you a couple of examples how I think AI affects your life. And I would like to highlight, for the moment, I will be talking about AI in the classical sense, not about generative AI, about the kind of AI that actually has been around for quite some time. So my statement here is AI is affecting almost all areas of our lives. Let's pick some. You use social media, depending on the age, maybe not TikTok, but it doesn't matter, you use social media. And we all know, there's no news, I guess, that there's no news that social media obviously uses algorithms to feed you with content that you like. The objective typically is to make you stay longer on the platform. I think what we typically reflect less on is that this is actually changing our perception of reality. Right? So you may feel like the things you like or even maybe your political views are widely shared because, well, this is what you see, right? You go on Instagram or LinkedIn and you see mostly stuff that you agree with because this is something that you like to engage with. So social media is obviously is strongly influenced by AI. Recommendations of different kinds, if you're using Netflix or Spotify, any kind of thing that you consume, might be a service, might be a product. If you go on Amazon, you get recommendations. And I actually found it more and more intriguing that those recommendations are getting actually useful. A couple of years ago, I bought boots for the winter. And then my recommendation was, hey, do you like boots? Yeah, well, I just bought boots, so I don't need another pair, surprise. But this is really getting better up to a point where I feel, yes, this is a useful recommendation. I realize, okay, I'm actually following up on those recommendations. AI is really useful in that context. But, well, again, we are affected by AI. If you have money to invest, or whether you need money, in either case, AI is heavily involved. AI will decide what you get about, and AI will also be involved in basically making at least some of the investment decisions. If you are getting sick, I hope you won't, but if you do, then healthcare is now more and more influenced by AI. There was a recent study by the American Medical Association. So there is basically a standard set of tasks that medical experts are asked to perform, and they show that by using AI, they consistently perform better, right? And this is an example here of a CT scan. So I think this is an example that you've heard of, that AI is much better at recognizing early stage cancer than very experienced humans, which is good. Yeah. Traffic, if you use Google Maps, I think most people do. So this is AI. It also tells you how long it's going to take. Most of the time, it's pretty accurate, I would say. And if you're, for some reason, looking for a partner still, then your luck will also depend on AI, because there will be algorithms, AI-based algorithms, deciding on whether you actually, will be provided with a good match or not. Eventually, it's up to you, but the filtering is based on algorithms. So this is all, and I would like to emphasize this again, this is standard AI. This has nothing to do with generative AI. This has been around for a while, it has improved, and it's affecting our lives. So now, things have changed. 2 years ago, November, I think 28, 2 years ago, or 29, GPT was released, and I think immediately, a couple of weeks, people were excited about it. And the question is, what has actually changed? So let's have a 2-minute, I won't bother you with technical details so much, but let's have a quick look into the technical details. So what does normal AI do? And then we look at what GenAI does. So normal AI uses training data. What does it mean? Let's consider a bank. A bank has customers, hopefully, and over time they will learn or see who paid back the money and who did not, right? So this is something that you can consider training data, and you can feed this data to an AI model. Could be a neural network. We won't go into any details here. And this model learns basically how to connect inherent features, maybe the age of the person, maybe the profession, maybe where they live, with the outcome that you find interesting. And as a bank, obviously, you're interested in your customers paying back the money. And this can be a really complex process. So this is not simple rules, but these models are really good at understanding very complex connections. And this is all happening automatically. So all you have to provide is the data on the left hand. Model learns and is then able, for instance, for a new customer that you haven't seen, to make a prediction, which is useful because you need to make the decision for this new customer whether you would like to give this person money or not. This is what we call supervised machine learning. This is standard AI, has been around for decades. It's getting better because obviously the computers are getting better, but okay. Now, same idea, you can expand on this. If you've ever wondered why your car can actually tell you how fast you're supposed to drive, at some point, somebody has done a job like this. So they took pictures of street signs like this and have annotated those. So this is a 30 sign, this is a 50 sign, and this is a 100 sign. And you can feed those pictures to an AI model, and without explaining anything, it will also learn, okay, how does a sign with a 30 look like? How does a sign with a 50 look like? And this is, of course, I think this is already quite interesting how this works. It's also technologically interesting. I won't talk about it, but again, this is standard AI, has been around for a long time. So, what has changed? So what you see here, by the way, just quickly go back, is what are we predicting? We're technically predicting a number or a category, right? So we are saying, okay, this is the 30 sign, this is the 50 sign, this customer will pay back, this customer won't pay back. What large language models, so this is the technology behind GPT, can do, they can predict words. So this is essentially what these systems do. Of course, they don't predict words, they predict numbers, because this is what computers do. They predict numbers, or they can work with numbers. So the magic behind this is that they found a way to encode basically words as numbers. We won't talk about how this works. It's pretty complex and I think it's really, really interesting how this works. But what you see here is that, okay, if we have an input such as the sky is, then this system can figure out that the most likely next word is blue. And by repeating this process iteratively, you can generate a large text. And if you match this with a prompt, this is how generative AI works. So we are generating something. We're not only predicting something, but by continuing this process over and over and over again, we are generating a text. And this is obviously very, very different from predicting a number or from predicting whether a customer is going to pay back money or not. I hope you agree with me on that. So that's different in nature. The second thing that has changed is this interface. Is there anybody in the room who has never used GPT before? Okay. It's that simple. Everybody can use it. It's very, very simple. All you need to do is type in the natural language command, and it's going to help you, hopefully, in some way. If you want to predict or build a model for predicting whether people pay back their money or whether a street sign is this or that, you obviously need very, very strong technical skills. You need to program. This is complicated. It's really complicated, and this is honestly really easy. And the use cases basically coming out of this are countless. They're really countless. And I'm going to talk about a couple of them. I cannot talk about all of them, but I would like to talk about a couple of them. Some that are maybe interesting for you as a private person, because it's exciting to use AI and maybe also makes your life a bit easier, and some from a professional perspective. Okay? So first question for today, how can you personally benefit from AI? And what I would like, or what is interesting to think about, is that AI is actually sort of an assistant. I mean, there's an assistant out there, a very patient one. It will take all your questions and whatever question you repeat will be very patient with you. It will answer, and it will also answer with sufficient detail. And an idea I would like to use in this talk is, I read this article, was published a couple of weeks ago in the New York Times, and the author, she said, I'm taking a decision holiday and put AI in charge of my life. And I think this is a nice thought, right? So there are so many decisions, and decisions can be, let's be honest, decisions can be exhausting, right? So there are many decisions you have to do, or you have to make every day, and why not, for some of them, maybe not the most important ones, put AI in charge, or let AI assist us with those decisions. Also, by the way, besides decisions, there are also so many questions. I have a 6-year-old son. He has many, many questions. And it turns out that GPT can help a lot with these questions, especially when I don't know the answer. So let's go to some use cases that are not necessarily important, but they show the capabilities very nicely. So let's start with grocery shopping, right? We all have to go grocery shopping once in a while. So what you could do is you can say, okay, I'm about to go grocery shopping for the week, and I don't want to decide what I want to buy. So please tell me, I'm a family of 3, we're a family of 3, and order this list by section. And I cannot copy everything because it's long, but it's obviously providing with the list. And if you go through it, you will realize it's a reasonable list. And you could, of course, modify this in a way, say, okay, I'm a vegetarian, I'm vegan. It will take this into account, and it will provide you with some good ideas what to buy. And of course, later on, also what to cook. Now, something, I don't know whether you have tried this so far. I took a random picture from Google, from a shopping cart, and I uploaded this to GPT and asked, okay, what am I missing from the list that you just gave me? And if you look at this picture, it's not very big, but you can see, okay, there's a cauliflower, I don't know, there's some alpros, so basically what GPT can do is it can analyze the picture, and I think it does a pretty decent job. So it says, okay, there are some leafy greens, yeah, agreed. There's cauliflower, yeah, we can see that. There's parsley or fresh herb, I couldn't tell, GPT neither, but it tells us, okay, it's something like that. There are apples, I would have missed those, I think. And there's plant-based milk. So it can analyze pictures. So GPT 4.0, so the most recent version, is a natively multimodal model. So it can analyze pictures to a, I think, pretty impressive extent. And I ask, okay, what's missing? And then it's obviously going to tell me what I'm missing. Okay, grocery shopping. How about cooking? Cooking is, I often find myself on a Friday night, okay, what are we going to cook? I don't know. And you can get ideas, obviously, but you can also get specific advice. So what you see here is a screenshot of a conversation I had. So if you have GPT-4 also, the most recent version, then you can actually talk. And I cannot show you the conversation, but it's a very natural conversation you can have. And it's important because when you're cooking, you might not be able to type, right? Because you're busy. So I asked, Christmas season is coming, right? In Germany, red cabbage is something very important during this season. What you can see is that obviously my pronunciation of red was more like rat. So somehow it turned into rat. It got the idea anyway and provided with instructions, and then you could really follow up and ask, okay, well, how am I doing this? It smells weird. What can this be? So you can really have a conversation while you're doing this. You can really get some support. Again, it can really serve as an assistant to you. And I mean, I think the idea of having an assistant helping you in all kinds of situations is so nice, isn't it? It's Christmas season, as you know, and oftentimes we are stressed out by buying gifts. I'm very bad at buying gifts, or at least I'm good at buying gifts. I'm very bad at thinking about good ideas. I like gifts, but somehow I always struggle with ideas, generating ideas. So why not ask GPT? So I protected the privacy of my wife by not revealing too much information about her. But what you can see, I asked, okay, I need a gift for my wife. She's 38 years old. She likes crime series, puzzles, and hiking. Any ideas? And I'm only copying the first couple suggestions you get, but you get a lot of suggestions. They're not bad. So a true crime book, a mystery subscription box for the crime enthusiast. Then the list continues, right? So it's only the first two choices. For the puzzle lover, a challenging jigsaw puzzle, escape room games. For the hiking enthusiast, a day hiking backpack, maybe hiking poles, and also blended ideas, right? So trying to combine these things, and a hiking murder mystery game, a themed weekend getaway. So I think especially if you're bad at this is so helpful. I mean, if you have no idea whatsoever and you just have a couple of parameters, this is not a very good prompt. It's a very short one, right? So you could provide much more information, maybe have some examples of what the person has liked in the past. You will get really good suggestions.
Did you choose one of those?
No, I mean, I know what to buy for my wife, so that's okay. But you know, for maybe also for people you're, I think this is also maybe particularly helpful for people you're not very well acquainted with. So the typical, there's a wedding, you know, what is common? I mean, you can even ask things like, what is customary? Because sometimes you're not, I'm not sure sometimes. So what is customary? And then you get some feedback on that. Okay, advice on your style. So disclaimer, I didn't use it, so I am responsible for my outfit today. But there are apps that basically allow you to take pictures of everything that you have in your wardrobe, and it can tell you how to combine things in a good way. You could also use GPT for that, right? So this is a common use case. You take a picture of yourself and say, okay, I have a job talk today. Is this appropriate? And it will give you pretty decent feedback. This is a particular app. Basically making suggestions. Of course, it's a successful startup because it has teamed up with some shops, so it's all immediately giving you recommendations what to buy. But I think the idea that you can get feedback on these things, which I think is something that some people are really insecure about. Maybe you say, I don't care, fine. But I think many people do care. And yeah, how do you get feedback, right? I think this is can be useful. Completely different scenario, remodeling, right? So you need to make decisions in your home, and it can be, I think these are hard decisions, most importantly, expensive ones, right? So how do you remodel your kitchen? Do I need a kitchen? How is it supposed to look like? Well, you can try. You can just take a picture of a room, and you can look at it with a new kitchen or with a new furniture, and you can also get suggestions. What colors might be good? So there are all kinds of tools and apps out there that can help you and assist you in your daily life. Okay, this is private life, right? This is exciting, but it doesn't help us making a better or doing a better job. So how can we benefit professionally? So I'm starting with the obvious because I have to mention it for sake of completeness. Writing and communication. I assume that everybody has used GPT at some point for writing and communication. If you haven't, yeah, you're probably not judging, living on the rock, because I mean, this is just so obvious and it makes your life so much easier. So let me go to a couple of things. Drafting, editing, communication, right? So the most obvious use case is you have an email, you're not sure, is this good enough, is this appropriate? You would like to complain to a superior or criticize a colleague. You can ask GPT, is this good enough? Can I improve the tone? This is an easy use case. Also, obviously for, well, we get there. Document creation. So there are different documents that you can create or you have to create. Maybe you have to create a thesis, maybe you have to create a report. And GPT can get you started. And why not use it? I would say up to this point, I mean, we're at the university, but now when I'm getting actually emails and abstracts from students that are badly written, I know two things. First, they cannot write. And second, they're not smart enough to use GPT. And I really wonder why, right? Because this is such an obvious use case. And I don't see any ethical concern feeding your content that you have created to GPT and making it better. It's there, you know, you should use it. Data analysis and insights, I don't know whether you know, you can feed GPT, you can take an Excel file or CSV file and ask to analyze it. You can also take a picture even of like a dashboard or plot, and ask GPT, please explain what I see, or write it down. We can do that. Creative assistance, yeah, if you don't have good ideas for, I don't know, for whatever in your work context, you have to organize an event, you have to give a talk, and you don't know what to talk about, GPT will help you. Decision support, we talked about decision support, also works in a professional context. Accessibility, so if you're interested or you're confronted with maybe a technical document, really technical document, you feel like, yeah, I don't really get this, you can ask GPT, you feed it, say, okay, here, turn this into a one-pager that someone can understand that did not study computer science or medicine, and it will do that. If you've ever tried, you can also really play explain this to a 5-year-old kind of card. It's very, very good. I once took a paper of mine, said, okay, explain this to a 5-year-old, and I was really genuinely impressed how nicely it breaks down the ideas. But there are many other use cases, so I trust that you have heard of many of those. Just to give you one example, in case you have never done this, there are more extreme examples like of this. I said, okay, I would like to tell an employee of mine that his performance is absolutely underwhelming, that I'm going to fire him if he does not improve immediately. Can you draft an email? Use a professional and polite tone. And I find this really nice, to be honest. Yeah, so I hope this message finds well. I'm writing to address a serious concern regarding your recent performance over the past, and then it leaves gaps for you to fill. Isn't that cool? And it has become evident that your work is not meeting the expectations and standards required for your role. Specifically, I've observed now you're supposed to actually tell the person what has gone wrong. These are concerning and blah, had an impact, etc. I want to stress that immediate and significant improvement is required, and I'm outlining clear expectations. So I do not only like the content, but also the template idea, right? So it's if you are not a very good communicator, this actually helps you to establish a good way of communicating, because you're also not only communicating in the right way, but also the right things. So I find this pretty useful, and you can use this for all kinds of scenarios. I don't know whether you've ever had the urge to code anything in terms of programming. Maybe. In case you haven't, you can try it now. So maybe you have a file, think of an Excel file, and you've heard, okay, there's technology that can predict things, but you have no idea how it works. But the thing that you would like to predict, the value that you would like to predict is in column H, just random example. Python, do it. Write a Python script that creates a neural network that does exactly that. The script is longer than you can see here, but it creates code, and I would say in 95% of the cases it's executable immediately. If you have no idea what to do with this, it also comes with an instruction what to do with this. And you could interact now further if you feel like, okay, this is too complicated, I have no idea where to put this, I have never typed anything into my computer to give a command. It can help you, and you can ask, and it will show you. So, you can really nicely interact, and it will help you code if you somehow have the urge to. So next point. So when you search for something on the internet, what is your main? It's not about putting anyone on the spot, but what are you using? Are you still Googling? Is Googling your main thing? Who would say that Google is the main source if you're searching something on the internet? Okay, it's not bad, right? It's just important to realize what Google does. What does Google do? Well, it locates websites that contains content that relates to your query. So that's fine. But there's something that you may find interesting, and I really would like, or that's my recommendation, to check it out. It's called Perplexity. So Perplexity is a search engine that combines the capabilities of Google and GPT. So what I put in here is, what are the most recent developments in research on large language models, LLMs? And you could ask anything. You could ask about recipes. You could ask about what is the best university for studying data science, something like that, right? Some random question. And it will not only give you a comprehensive answer that is like GPT-like, but it also gives you the sources. So it gives you the sources, and yes, these sources exist. And you can double check whether the content was appropriately sourced and whether the content is actually there. So you can double check, but it's really, I think this is a tremendously useful tool, and other competitors like Google, they're following up, but they're a bit slow actually. So Google is to Google, GPT is GPT. Sometimes GPT tries to provide you with some sources, but it's not as sophisticated as what Perplexity is doing, I would say. Something that you may have not heard of. Who has heard of Notebook LM? Anyone? I think this is the most undervalued tool out there. It's free. It was created by Google. And what Notebook LM is the so-called grounded AI. What is a grounded AI? A grounded AI means that you can upload content, and whatever you were asking to this app, it will only refer to the content that you have provided, right? And this is really interesting because you can upload all kinds of sources. It doesn't look so exciting, but let's take an example. So you can upload sources, and those sources could be anything really. It could be a YouTube video, it could be a website, it could be a PDF, it could be an Excel sheet, anything. Up to 50 sources. You can just upload those sources, and it's going to work with those. So those who know me a little bit know that I'm a passionate long-distance runner, so I won't miss the opportunity to talk about it. So what I did is I uploaded a couple of content on running. So that's a video, how to improve your VO max. That's a figure that is relevant for endurance athletes. A marathon training plan, training for a marathon. It's just some content from a PDF. And what you see here is that it's automatically generating a note. It's called a note. Here. And what you see is that it's summarizing the contents. And this is really interesting. If you, for instance, need to study and you have, I don't know, 20 different books, or let's say 5 books and a couple of cases, some PowerPoints, you put it all in there. And it will, first of all, be able to summarize everything in a concise way for you. And you can ask questions. You can ask specific questions. You can interact with this tool like a chatbot, but it will only refer to the content that you have provided. And the second thing is, especially for studying, I think it's amazing, it can generate questions. It can generate from the content that it has analyzed the most, let's say, concerning aspects or most important aspects that you should be able to answer. Cool, right? So define VO2 max and explain its significance in endurance performance, these kind of things. There is another feature, I think it's a bit of a toy feature, but at the same time, maybe you are a person that likes listening to things, and it can create a podcast from the content that you have uploaded. And let's just listen to it for 10 seconds. You can find my...
All right, buckle up everybody, because today we are diving deep into VO2 max.
Yeah, VO2 max.
We're going to unlock some serious energy here today.
Absolutely.
You know, that number that tells us how well our bodies are using oxygen.
It's really the milliliters of oxygen your body uses per kilogram you weigh every single minute.
Okay, so this isn't just something that marathon runners or Olympic athletes need to think about.
No.
So you got the idea. So this goes on for 15 minutes. It's automatically generated. So this is voices from the box, so to say. And if you are studying something and you feel like, yeah, it would be so nice about the content that you have to study to just listen to something, well, this could be a solution. Speaking of research, if you're an academic or a student, there's a tool called Cite. There are some other tools that are similar, but I'm giving examples. I would like to stress there are so many tools for each of these use cases. I cannot name or mention all of them. But this is an interesting one because oftentimes...
Can you upload a book, a digital book, and it makes it an audio book, so it reads it?
Yeah, almost. So you can upload a digital book, but it will be a compressed way. It will not read the book to you, but it will talk about the contents of the book. Yeah. So here, what Cite does, it does a literature review for you. So you can ask queries. So I asked for something that is from my research. I need an overview of this specific topic, and then it creates a literature review style overview. And it tells you what search it is that used, and of course you can modify this. It tells you the publication it has consulted, and I'm not saying that you should use this to replace the literature review section of your thesis, but I think it allows you to, let's say, in a couple minutes to figure out whether a topic you're considering is worthwhile investigating, for instance. So, this took hours, sometimes days to figure out. I think now you can do this in, let's say, in less than an hour to see, okay, is there potential or is this problem that I'm considering already solved? Yeah, again, GenAI in the works. Creativity, there's lots of creativity tools out there, and some I think are very nice for professional users. DALL-E, anyone has use Delhi already? Yeah, I think so, right? So Delhi is nice. I mean, I'm not sure whether this is used for professional purposes, but it's also amazing what you can create. Because oftentimes what is criticized when it comes to GenAI, it's killing the creativity, but at the same time, I believe your own creativity is also required to come up with really cool content sometimes. So you can create pictures, you can create videos. So I can show you a video, but it's a video about two cats on the beach drinking pina coladas, so it's moving. So you basically have a prompt and it creates a video out of the prompt. There are also tools that take a picture, turn this into a video, so you can really generate video content using AI. You can create music. I don't know whether you've ever tried this. This is super fascinating. It's super fascinating, also a bit funny. There are some funny things I cannot show you, but look out for them. This is very, very cool. But you can also use this for professional purposes because in many contexts you might need music and you can create them and there is no copyright on it, right? So you can just generate something that you can use. Jasper AI is something that you can use for content creation. If you have a website or LinkedIn, so there are templates and you can just easily create content you can publish. There are tools for creating ads. So there is literally a tool for everything. And I find it really hard to get an overview. But if you have a particular use case, I think you will find something. So important question. Should you be paying for GenAI? I think this is a question I get a lot. So do I need to pay for GPT Plus or do I need to pay for other tools? And I would like to go back to running as a metaphor to explain this to you. Even if you're not into running or hate sports, you will relate to the metaphor, okay? So this is a running shoe from Nike. It's called Alphafly. And it's about 300 euros. There are versions that are even more expensive, but this is about 300 euros. And it's designed, there's a carbon plate. I would save you the details. It's very lightweight and there's a carbon plate in it in the sole, so it propels you forward. It makes you faster. The question is, it's a question for you now, how much, talking percent, do you think? So this is 300 euros. How much does it make you faster? Talking percent. Just guess.
5%.
5%?
Half a percent.
Half of a percent. So it's 2 to 3%. Yeah, so it's 2 to 3% of a performance increase. So you're getting faster, 2 to 3%. So the question now is, it's 300 euros and you can probably use it because of the design. It's not very durable. You can typically use it for like 2 or 3 marathons if you're running long distance. So you're basically paying 100 euros per race to be 2% faster. Now, guess, how many people are paying this? Pros, sure. But how many recreational runners are paying for this?
Lots.
So I sampled a random picture from the Berlin Marathon to show you. So you cannot see it specifically, but you can believe me that you can see a couple of things. You can see this guy winning. And the other things you can see is that every single person here in the picture is wearing this shoe. Not this shoe specifically, but every person on this picture I could identify is paying essentially 100 euros to be 2% faster in this particular race. Rational? We can argue about this. People do it. So now I'm getting back to the question of whether you should be paying for GenAI, and I hope you get the connection here. Is GenAI a super shoe for your work? Right? And my argument is, no, it's much better. Because the difference is that if you are a very slow runner, and you wear those shoes, you're 2% faster, you're still a very slow runner. And if you are a medium pace runner and you wear those shoes, you're still a medium pace runner, you're just a tiny bit faster. But I believe with technology like GPT or GenAI, you can actually not make a relative improvement, but an absolute improvement to a, let's say, specific level. So if you have no ideas whatsoever, with GPT, you will have some good ideas for sure. I mean, maybe you're not ready for the next level creative job, but you will have good ideas. You can generate good ideas. If you have a situation where you have no feedback at all because no one understands what you're doing or you don't feel like asking any people around you, you will get reasonably helpful feedback in many situations. Even, by the way, in let's say delicate situations concerning your private life, you can get pretty decent feedback, I would say. If you're a bad communicator and people have been complaining about your emails because they're perceived as rude or you struggle like getting your point across, you will turn from a bad communicator to a decent communicator, because if you just use the help of these tools, you will not improve relatively, but you will get to that point of being decent. Same with writing. If you're a bad writer, you will not become a next level author, but you will be decent at least. So the errors will be removed, the grammar is going to be correct, and the flow is going to be improved as well. So you can move from being not really good at something and being reasonably good at something. And I think this is the difference I wanted to highlight if you're not into running. So I think this is something to keep in mind. Yes?
So would you say it's worth it to pay, for example, for the professional, the pro version of GPT? Because it's more like an improvement to the standard version, which is for free, right?
So it's up, right. So I'm not here to advocate paying for GPTs. I'm paying for GPT-4o. I think the difference is quite considerable. The difference is quite considerable. The cutoff date is a different one. So for all of you, so basically you get a model, you train it up to a certain point in time, and then this is all the knowledge the model has, and the cutoff date of GPT-4o is more recent than the cutoff date of GPT-3 or 3.5. It has more capabilities, you can talk to it, it has the multimodal feature, but it really depends on your job, or we will also get there, that you should always, from a professional point of view, I always recommend, okay, think about the problems that you have to solve first, and then try to match it. Is that worth it? If you're working, I don't know, if you're selling a physical product somewhere, you don't need GPT, but if you're having an office job, maybe you do. Yeah. Before I get to my message, I do have a message for you today.
Can I add one thing? Because I was wondering that you didn't mention this.
Yeah.
Can you be a better programmer?
Absolutely.
I have to say I have some minor programming skills, but especially when there's new languages out or new, right? Python was new. That's fast. You basically tell them, okay, please give me this code, and I tried it now with a few things with some algorithm that is copy and paste, and you can, without understanding every little line. But now, because so many students are so concerned, oh, I need to be programming well, and then how do I start? But I think that gives you a quick start on being a programmer, or at least a decent one.
Absolutely. I think that what I experienced personally is as an educator, for students, the risk is that you get confronted with code that you don't understand. So that might cause frustration, right? So you can generate everything, right? So it can be really complicated, but then if you want to improve it, if you want to use it, then you have to understand it after all, and that can be frustrating. But for professionals, it's clear. So in the software engineering community, it's clear that if you are not using this, then you're not fast enough anymore. Right? And there was a long discussion already in software engineering how to reuse things. So, I mean, nobody needs to program certain, reused aspects. But now it's just getting faster and faster and faster. And there is a demand for it, and it's integrated into programming environments. So it is a must these days. Yeah. So before I get to my message, so I have a message for you today. That's good, I hope. Can AI be harmful? I think it's an interesting question. I thought I at least spent 2 slides on it. So let's get there. So the big question these days is the question of AGI. So what does AGI stand for? Artificial General Intelligence. So what we're having now is typically considered specialized, meaning it's good at one particular task, but it's not more intelligent than the average human being. The question is, can we get there? And if you believe movies, so in case you're not nerdy enough, so the Skynet is referring to the original Terminator movie where the machines at some point decided to take over the planet and get rid of the humans. They did succeed. Well, then that's all the story is about. And the other is Ultron in the Marvel Universe, a more recent one, who also came to the conclusion that in order to save the planet, we have to get rid of the humans. And it's, of course, surprisingly compelling that this might be true. Anyway, so this is the conclusion the machine is getting to. And the question is, okay, is this something we need to be worried about? Sam Altman is the CEO of OpenAI, so the company behind ChatGPT, says hardware-wise we're ready. Says it's achievable with current hardware. And here's the concerning news. I found this really, really interesting. So there is a AGI, so artificial and general intelligence head. So there was a guy who was responsible for this topic specifically at OpenAI. And he resigned in November this year, so just a couple of weeks ago, and said, okay, we are not ready for what's coming. I have ethical concerns. I would like to look at this from the outside, but I don't want to be part of it anymore. So I'm not sure whether this was also a bit of a move for himself, to show up in the media, etc. Probably. But I think there is a consensus that we might not know what these machines or these AIs might be capable of in a couple of months from now or years from now. And this is obviously something that we need to think about, not to be concerned about, but rather, and this is also part of my message, we should inform ourselves a little bit and join a discussion. And it's not necessary to understand how a neural network works to argue whether how we can use these kind of things. This is what we do at a university, right? When ChatGPT was released, we discussed, okay, how can we use this or how should we not use this? You don't need to understand how it works to have these kind of discussions, and that's obviously going a similar direction. When it's coming to misuse, there's lots of misuse. Obviously, right, if you have, when the camera was invented, somebody had the idea we can use it for spying on people, and you have the same thing. This is an overview from Google. So there's lots of use cases ranging from manipulation in terms of disinformation up to abuse. So it's important to be aware of those things, maybe for us as individuals, but also, of course, this really creates a new need for law enforcement in these areas, because this is something that hasn't existed a couple of years ago. Yeah, so AI can be harmful. I don't think it's surprising. I just wanted to mention it. Every technology that is powerful can be used for good and bad things. So, what's my message? I got one. I got a couple of points for you to take away. I don't know whether you need to hear this. I had 3 points. Is this will not disappear, right? AI will not disappear. I'm mentioning it because depending on the audience, some people need to hear it. I recently talked to experts from the transportation industry, but lawyers mostly, and they were very conservative. They didn't even believe that this is useful for their job, which I found very surprising, because I think this is one of the jobs that, it's more likely that AI is going to put you in the basket than the other way around. So it's not going to disappear. I think this is something that we have to accept. The second, and this is very important, is the developments are exponential. So what you see on the left-hand side is DALL-E 1, and on the right-hand side you see DALL-E 3, and the prompt is, show me a picture of Heisenberg eating ramen noodles with a cat. And you see on the left-hand side that it's, at the point it was still kind of cool because we couldn't create pictures out of prompts, so this was a new thing. But it's pretty bad, right? So those pictures are not impressive per se.
This one.
Yeah. But here, what you see here, okay, here the ramen noodles are floating. But the other 3 pictures, those are genuine pictures. Those are great. Those are great. And it's important to realize that there are not even 2 years between this, between the left and the right version of the same tool. And this, depending on how old you are, if you're very young, you might already be used to that kind of pace. But I think for us, being 30 or older, we're not used to that pace. These things are not, it's not a question of years. Sometimes it's a question of months. So the developments are really exponential. Third, every AI you see today is the worst version of it. I often see this, right? So people spot with GPT when it was released, people were very keen identifying, okay, what does not work? And of course, it's interesting to figure out what doesn't work, but it's also a bit, my point that I would like to make is, so here you see the example, that's GPT 3.5. If you ask GPT 3.5, how many countries begin with the letter Y? It gives you 3, Yemen, Zambia, Zimbabwe. Obviously incorrect. If you ask GPT 4.0, you obviously get the correct answer. So every AI you see is the first version of it. It won't just get better, and it will get better at an exponential pace. If you're interested in that, by the way, in the exponential pace and AI is getting better, there is a platform, it's a website called Chatbot Arena. So there, the tool vendors, the LLM creators, they upload their tools, their LLMs, and then there are tasks and people assess how well the LLMs perform on certain tasks. So this is based on user perception. And the interesting thing is Gemini is currently at the top. Somehow this doesn't work anymore. Okay, I will just do it like this. So Gemini is at the top currently. The interesting point is just that it was released on November 21, so like a bit more than a week ago. And the week before that, we had the version November 14. So you see that they release a version like every week, maybe also to be high up in the list. there might be a bit of a strategic thought associated with this. It's really moving fast. That's basically what I want to tell you. So, what can you do? In case you feel overwhelmed sometimes by the topic, I can tell you I'm overwhelmed too. And I do this for a living. I try to inform myself. I find it extremely hard to keep up. On a technical level, I gave up at some point. It's not possible. Every day there's something new, really. Every day there's something new. Or like 5 or 10 papers every day about some new architecture idea, how LLMs can be improved or work differently. It's really hard to follow. But I don't think this is the right take. I think there is a way to keep on top. So what can you do? I think the first thing is to first understand and keep this in mind, especially if you're making decisions in your business. So the exponential character of AI is mind-blowing. So here you see it visualized. I have to say, though, this is from NVIDIA. If you don't know NVIDIA is producing the chips. It's the most valuable company on this planet as of today in terms of market capitalization. It's so valuable that half of the employees are millionaires, and I think 20% own 20 million or more. So it's a problem for the company because the stock went up so steep that they have a motivation issue because everybody's rich in the company, almost everybody. So this is this chip that NVIDIA released a couple months ago. It's called Blackwell, so the latest thing. So what I want to show you here is when I was younger and NVIDIA was just a company that was producing graphics cards and only interesting to nerds who wanted to play computer games, the rule of thumb was Moore's Law. Moore's Law was, okay, every 2 years, computing power doubles. That was Moore's Law. It's not a law, it's just somebody came up with this. So every 2 years, computing power doubles. You see that this is not exactly the case anymore because what we have seen in the last 8 years is like 1,000-fold increase. And yeah, so it's exponential both on the software and on the hardware level. So keep this exponential character in mind. It's going fast. Be curious and inform yourself. How can you do this? Well, I leave it up to you. I think the easiest way typically to learn about something, if you are walking around and maybe you have a commute, listen to something. There are various podcasts. I don't want to advertise anything in particular, but they're all free, so there is also no money associated with it. So I'm listening to this one, not because it's necessarily the best one, but what this guy is doing, he's giving every week a summary of like 40 minutes. And he tells you, okay, OpenAI has released this new model. They have this new idea. There's a legal fight between Elon Musk and OpenAI. So he discusses on a very high level these kind of things. And if you do this for the first time, you have some trouble getting used to the names because maybe you don't know Anthropic, you don't know all the different names, all the people involved. But I think if you do this for 3 weeks, you get there, and then you are on a high level, you're on top of things. You understand, okay, there are models for this, there are models for that, there is a new feature, this has this and this impact. So I think this is a way to keep yourself informed on a level that is maybe sufficient to engage in a discussion and have some sense of what's going on. The last thing, that's my last point, is to stay problem-oriented, right? As a private person, you can be excited about AI, perfectly fine. You can generate music, you can generate monkeys with glasses on or cats on the beach, it's all fine. But in a professional setting, it's obviously important to stay problem-oriented. What do I mean by that? Oftentimes, when we get approached by companies, executives want to know, okay, how do we use AI? And the question is, well, what problems do you have that are a good match for AI? If you don't have any problems that can be solved using AI, then you probably shouldn't be using AI. There is no merit in just using AI because it's on vogue or trendy or interesting. It's interesting, indeed, but you need to find a match between the problems that you have and what the technology provides. I think in many cases, it's easy to establish as a private person. If you're doing office work, you can use GPT for all kinds of things. Of course, that's a good point to add. Make sure that if you use it for professional purposes, that you do not feed any confidential content into it. You might get in trouble. So most companies who are actually advocating the use have started basically having their own local GPT instances, so you don't have that problem anymore. So stay problem-oriented. And yeah, that's my last point. I hope I could give you some insight into what GenAI is doing or can be doing. And yeah, I think we have some time left for questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much for this overview of what we can do and what might happen and what not. So I guess we have some questions, and so we definitely have some time for questions. Yes, please.
What about the input you give to the AI and the confidentiality of data? What does actually happen to the data, or is it stored somewhere, or why shouldn't I, for example, upload confidential data?
Yeah, so what you can expect is that the data is stored somewhere, where exactly we don't know, on some OpenAI server, and you can expect that it's going to be used for training future versions of the AI. Is this now always a problem? Technically, no. I mean, how confidential is an email to your boss? Because nobody will look at this specific email anyway. But you simply have to comply with certain regulations and rules. So if you have, we are working with companies and we have a confidentiality agreement, I cannot feed my data to the system. And this is important to keep this in mind. Otherwise, you might get into legal trouble. Seriously. Yeah. I leave it to us.
Sorry. Are there a lot of copyright issues? Because some, for example, the images you create, some do have copyright, some don't.
Yeah, it's an ongoing discussion, and I think it's not perfectly clear at this point. So my understanding is that if you create something with DALL-E, technically there is no copyright on it. But then sometimes you do see that it's very close to original images, and then but this is an ongoing thing. So in the US, there especially with OpenAI. So now a couple of newspapers like the New York Times has sued OpenAI. So what I expect is going to happen in most cases with this with those content banks like newspapers, there will be a settlement, and then they will be allowed to use their content. With pictures, it's more complicated because probably the set is more diverse. I think legally it's an ongoing question if you want to be sure. So what I always do is, I say, okay, it was created with DALL-E. That's all I can do at this point. But it's something that we have to keep an eye on what also per country the legislation is. Yeah.
Oh, I just want to mention that the threat in terms of confidentiality is real, as there have been cases, I think in the beginning with ChatGPT, where people were able to find confidential, I think, information from Samsung and retrieve it because employees previously used the chatbot to get, I think, manuals and stuff like that explained to them. And later on, obviously, people outside of the company were able to view this information kind of condensed through the chatbot. So this is definitely happening.
Yeah, and nevertheless, anything that you upload somewhere will be somewhere else, and everything that is somewhere else will be used by that owner of that person having access to that data.
And you can never be sure how these systems evolve. So what we see is that what GPT does, and this is, if you ask GPT, how can I get rid of my neighbor, it won't give you an answer, right? But this is basically it's called preference learning. It's built on top of the system, but this layer theoretically could be removed, and then you could get access to anything. So in the beginning, this was called jailbreaking, right? People tried out, okay, how can I get around this barrier, and they were successful. Now this is getting better and better. But you also see that if you use different systems, if you, for instance, like this decision-making assistant, what I use, GPT, is very open to give you advice. If you, for instance, ask Claude from Anthropic, it's much more careful. It will tell you in many more cases, hey, this is not really a good thing for an AI to decide, but here are some options you can consider. It's much more careful. But this is, again, right, if this barrier is removed, in theory, you could access any kind of information that's underneath.
Another question?
So do you think with the integration of AI tools, I see that a lot of Instagram Reels or YouTube Shorts compress information into shorter videos, and as you need less attention span, or maybe if ChatGPT can summarize something big, that in the long run this can be bad for us because it will decrease people's attention spans, and then eventually they can do more complicated stuff maybe.
I mean, the promise is always, right? So when robotic process automation or robotic automation was introduced, the promise was, hey, you don't need to do the nasty work anymore. You can focus on the cognitive labor and the nasty work that is done by an AI. this was the promise. In the end, there's more pressure to be efficient, and this efficiency cycle increases. Whether it's actually more pleasant, I'm not sure, because if you get a summary of everything in a couple minutes and everybody's doing it, then the expectation that you're actually doing it in a couple minutes is also simply there. Right now, I would say you have the advantage if you're using these tools excessively. People are wondering how efficient you are because most people are not using them. But at some point, this will be lost, and then so I do think it might further complicate things in that regard. Yeah.
Thank you. My question is, if an organization or a country is using artificial intelligence for national security, when it's time to say it's doing good or bad things?
I don't want to say unfortunately, but when it comes to security matters, this is then always the decision of the respective country and how they use it. And we see military use cases for AI, and AI is going to do how it is trained to act. And whether this is ethical or non-ethical, in the end depends on the humans that have set up these systems or trained these systems, as long as those systems don't behave in an unexpected way. Right, so this was the AGI question.
Also, the unexpected way is explicitly exploited by like you have military use cases like identifying signals or noise in the water, and then you can have a fake noise imitating everything. Like so there's like with every military invention, there's like you said, use and misuse with every technology.
Every technology can use for good and bad things. And here, I think maybe the scary thing is that we haven't fully discovered how far it goes. Yeah.
So these language models, so I understand that it's based on what's been written.
Yeah.
So does this mean that it's dominated maybe more by the major languages like English and other things get left out? And so I'm just interested in the bias this generates, because there's lots of interesting things that people are not writing about. There's really interesting languages that are not written languages with lots of knowledge. So does this mean it's going to be like a dumbing, like a bringing everything, like niche and specific and unusual things are kind of going to get squeezed out?
Not necessarily squeezed out, but indeed it's exactly as you said. I mean, it's a statistical phenomenon, right? So if there's little written about it, if there's little available about a topic or little available about a language, it's going to be less prominent. At the same time, I would say the content that you would like to generate is up to the person using it. So you could use GenAI to write something about a niche topic, as long as it's able to generate any content, but it will probably be. But indeed, it's a statistical model in the end. I mean, it's more complicated than statistical models typically, but it's a representation of what is out there.
However much time I spend writing about my tiny niche topic, I'm never going to be able to put enough in to...
But you can try. I mean, if you have a very niche topic, so I think if something is available on the topic, it ends up in there. So if it's more than 0, it's in there.
Okay, maybe one last question.
Okay, very broad, but what is AGI lacking to take over at the moment?
I think there is no agreed definition. So OpenAI, they actually released a statement where they classify, what are features of specialized AI. So what we now have like GPT and what would be more general AI. So the typical definition is completely independent decision making and being more intelligent or more capable across all fields than humans. I think this is still a vague definition, but this is how they define it. And if you consider, I mean, it's not that unlikely, because I mean, this simply knows everything, as you say, what was ever written. It can know everything that was ever produced on this planet. And written is one step, but now you see that notebook LM, it can take video. It's no problem to take voice and transform it into. So in the end, those AI systems, they know everything that was somehow produced on this planet. I think this is quite impressive. So the question is, how can we use it in a good way, hopefully? But it's it will get much more fancy than the things we see today. And I think every improvement I find so impressive, because every time I think, oh, this is possible, I wouldn't have thought a couple months ago.
Okay, then let's thank Henrik again. Thank you.